A single subatomic particle can occupy 1,000 different locations at the exact same time. Researchers at the University of Vienna confirmed this quantum superposition with 99.9% statistical accuracy. However, Albert Einstein famously refused to believe that your entire reality is a game of chance. This intellectual war peaked at the 1927 Solvay Conference, where 29 of history's greatest minds faced a crisis. While Niels Bohr championed the new chaos, Einstein fought a desperate battle to save a predictable universe. You have to imagine the scene at the Hotel Metropole. You have 29 of the world's most brilliant physicists, 17 of whom already were or would become Nobel laureates. Among them stood Albert Einstein, the famous professor from the Prussian Academy of Sciences, with his iconic wild hair and his unwavering belief in a logical, orderly cosmos. Across from him was Niels Bohr, the director of the Institute for Theoretical Physics in Copenhagen, a man who looked like a weary philosopher, king of the new atomic age. For 250 years, since the days of Isaac Newton, physics was a comforting story of cause and effect. We believed that if you knew the position and the momentum of every single atom in the universe, you could calculate the entire future with perfect precision. Think of it like a cosmic billiard table where every collision is mapped out from the beginning of time. This was classical determinism, the idea of a clockwork universe where nothing is left to chance. But a younger generation, led by Bohr and the brilliant, sharp-tongued Werner Heisenberg, had found a crack in the foundation. Heisenberg had just published his uncertainty principle, which suggested that at the subatomic level, nature is fundamentally blurry. If you know where an electron is, you lose track of where it is going. Bohr went even further, proposing a concept called complementarity. He argued that a particle doesn't even have a real, definite state until the moment you have the audacity to measure it. To Einstein, this was an intellectual betrayal. He spent the entire conference trying to trap Bohr in a logical corner. Every morning at the breakfast table, Einstein would present a new, complex thought experiment involving shutters and light boxes designed to prove that the universe could not be as fuzzy as Bohr claimed. Bohr would look at these diagrams with an expression of deep physical agony, his Danish features heavy with the weight of the challenge. He would spend the day wandering the rainy streets of Brussels, muttering to himself, searching for the flaw in Einstein's logic. And every single evening, Bohr would return to the dinner table and dismantle Einstein's argument, often using Einstein's own theories to prove that quantum mechanics held firm. It was the night physics fractured, splitting the scientific world into those who believed in a solid reality and those who accepted a universe built on the roll of the dice. Einstein slammed his coffee cup down and told Bohr he was wrong. This single argument would determine if reality itself was a total illusion. Einstein had discovered the answer while walking through the streets of Berlin. By 1927, Professor Dr. Phil, Albert Einstein was the undisputed titan of the Prussian Academy of Sciences. He was the man who had already rewritten the rules of space and time, yet he now found himself fighting to save the very concept of objective reality. To understand Einstein's stubbornness, you have to understand the world he had already built. In the early 20th century, physics was a clockwork masterpiece. If you knew the position and the velocity of every particle in the cosmos, you could, in principle, predict the entire future of the stars. This was the dream of determinism, and Einstein was its greatest architect. In 1915, he had finalized his general theory of relativity, showing us that gravity wasn't a mysterious force pulling on objects, but a curvature in the very geometry of space-time. To Einstein, the universe was a grand, logical, and deeply independent machine. It existed whether we were there to see it or not. But Einstein was a man haunted by his own genius. Back in 1905, during his miracle year at the patent office, he published a paper on the photoelectric effect. This paper, which eventually won him the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1921, introduced the world to the idea of light quanta, or photons. He had essentially cracked the door open for quantum mechanics. He was the one who first suggested that energy wasn't a continuous stream, but came in discrete, tiny packets. However, as the 1920s progressed, a younger generation of physicists, led by Werner Heisenberg and Niels Bohr, kicked that door off its hinges and walked into a world Einstein did not recognize. Everything they believed up to this point was wrong. This younger generation began to suggest that at the subatomic level the clockwork was broken. They argued that an electron doesn't have a definite position or a definite speed until you look for it. Before the moment of measurement, the particle exists in a superposition of states, a ghostly haze of possibilities where it is effectively everywhere and nowhere at once. Einstein found this idea utterly repulsive. He believed in what we call local realism. It is the common sense idea that objects have definite properties regardless of whether we are observing them. Think of it like a bathtub. If you leave the room, you expect the bathtub to stay in the bathroom. You don't expect it to dissolve into a cloud of bathtub probability where it might be in the kitchen or the backyard until you come back to check on it. To Einstein, the moon was. He saw the transition toward randomness as a failure of imagination. He famously stated, "Der Outweier felt nix," the old man or God does not play dice. He believed that the uncertainty discovered by Heisenberg was simply a sign of our own ignorance. He was convinced there must be hidden variables, deeper laws of nature that we simply hadn't found yet, which would restore order to the chaos. He wasn't just a skeptic. He was a man trying to save the very concept of objective truth from a generation of physicists who seemed content to throw it away. He was a reluctant revolutionary, a man who had ignited the fire of the quantum age only to spend the rest of his life trying to put it out in the